The morning light filtering into the dining hall of the Park estate was cold and gray, much like the mood of the man sitting at the head of the long marble table. Seo-yun tightened her grip on the silver coffee pot, her knuckles turning white inside her white cotton gloves. She had only been working at the estate for 3 weeks, but in that short time, she had learned the 3 cardinal rules of surviving employment under Park Ji-hoon, the head of the Chilsong syndicate. Be invisible, be efficient, and never, ever make a mistake. Ji-hoon was reading a dossier on his tablet, his sharp jawline tense, his dark eyes scanning the text with predatory speed. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit, tailored to perfection, hugging broad shoulders that carried the weight of Seoul's underworld. He hadn't touched his breakfast, a meticulously prepared spread of grilled fish, rice, and side dishes. He only cared about the coffee. It had to be black, scalding hot, and poured exactly when his cup was empty. Seo-yun stepped forward, her movements silent on the plush carpet. She poured the dark liquid into his porcelain cup, watching the steam rise. She was 24, with a face that most people forgot 5 minutes after meeting her. That was her superpower. Before she was a maid, she had been a lot of things: a street racer in Busan, a mechanic in a chop shop, and briefly, a lookout for a smuggling ring. She had taken this job to disappear, to lay low after a job went sideways and left her with a debt she couldn't pay. The Park estate was a fortress, the safest place in the city if you were on the staff list and the most dangerous if you weren't. The car, Ji-hoon said, his voice deep and raspy from lack of sleep. He didn't look up. It's waiting at the front entrance, sir, the head of security, a hulking man named Chief Kong, replied from the doorway. Driver is ready. Engine is warm. Ji-hoon nodded, finally setting the tablet down. He checked his watch. I'm late for the summit with the triads. If I'm not there in 20 minutes, they'll think I'm weak. He stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the marble floor. The tension in the room spiked. When Park Ji-hoon moved, the air pressure seemed to drop. He buttoned his jacket, checked the gun holstered beneath his left arm, and strode toward the main entrance. Seo-yun stepped back to let him pass, clutching the coffee pot to her chest. As he walked by, she caught a whiff of his cologne, sandalwood and cold steel. She turned to head back to the kitchen, her job done for the morning, but something caught her eye through the floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out onto the driveway. The black armored sedan was idling there, exhaust puffing into the chill air. The driver, a new guy named Min-ho who had replaced the old driver just yesterday, was sitting behind the wheel. But he wasn't looking at the front door, waiting for his boss. He was looking at his phone, tapping furiously, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror every split second. It was a small thing. A tiny detail. But Seo-yun had spent years in chop shops. She knew cars. And she noticed something else. The car was sitting slightly lower on the rear left suspension. It was an armored car, heavy by design, but the distribution was off. And there was a faint, almost invisible shimmer of heat distortion rising from the wheel well, distinct from the exhaust. Her mind raced back to her days in the garage. A magnetic limpet mine? No, too small. C4 packed into the wheel arch? Maybe. But the heat, that suggested an incendiary trigger or a faulty wiring job on a remote starter bypass. Then she saw Min-ho, the driver, do something that made her blood freeze. He unlocked the doors, but he didn't put the car in park. He kept his foot on the brake, his hand hovering over the door handle, ready to bail out. He wasn't waiting to drive. He was waiting to run. Ji-hoon was already halfway to the door. Chief Kong was opening it for him. In 5 seconds, the chairman would step out. In 10 seconds, he would reach the car. In 15 seconds, he would be dead. Seo-yun didn't think. The part of her brain that worried about being fired or executed for insubordination shut down. The only thing that remained was the instinct to stop a collision. Chairman, she called out. Ji-hoon didn't stop. He didn't even slow down. He was a man who ignored noise. She needed to physically stop him. She needed to make him pause, make him turn, make him do anything other than walk through that door. She broke into a run. It was a clumsy, desperate sprint across the polished floor. As she reached him, just as he was about to step across the threshold, she swung the silver coffee pot. She didn't aim for his face, that would be a death sentence. She aimed for the pristine white shirt and the expensive silk tie. Oops, she cried out, a fake, high-pitched sound of clumsiness that masked the calculated aggression of the move. The spout of the pot hit his arm, and the lid flipped open. A pint of scalding, black coffee erupted onto Park Ji-hoon's chest. The liquid soaked instantly into the fabric, burning his skin through the layers. The shock of the heat and the sheer audacity of the impact made him stumble back. He gasped, a sharp intake of breath, and his hand instinctively went to his holster before he even registered what had happened. What the hell? Chief Kang roared, stepping forward to grab Seo-yun. Ji-hoon looked down at his ruined suit, his chest heaving with shock and rising fury. He looked up at Seo-yun, his eyes blazing with a cold, murderous light. He looked like a dragon that had just been spat on by a mouse. You! He hissed, stepping toward her, ignoring the burning on his skin. Do you have any idea what you just did? Seo-yun dropped the pot. It clattered loudly on the tiles. She fell to her knees, bowing her head, trembling. It wasn't entirely acting. She was terrified. I'm sorry. I slipped. I'm so clumsy, sir, please forgive me. Forgive you? Ji-hoon grabbed her by the collar of her maid uniform, hauling her up until her toes barely touched the floor. I have a meeting that determines the fate of this city, and you just dressed me in third-degree burns. Kang, get her out of my sight. Deal with her later. I have to go. Sir, you need to change, Kang said, eyeing the blistering red skin visible at the collar. I don't have time. Ji-hoon snarled, shoving Seo-yun away. She crashed into a decorative vase stand, sending flowers spilling everywhere. I'll go as I am. Better to smell like coffee than fear. He turned back to the door. Seo-yun's heart hammered. It hadn't worked. He was too stubborn. He was going to walk out there anyway. No, she screamed, scrambling up. You can't go out there. The car. Ji-hoon stopped, his hand on the doorframe. He turned his head slowly, looking at her with dangerous curiosity. What did you say? The car. Seo-yun pointed through the glass. Look at the suspension. Look at the driver. He's not in park. Ji-hoon frowned, glancing out the window. He was a man of instincts, and something in Seo-yun's desperate tone pierced through his anger. He looked at the car. He looked at the driver, Min-ho. At that exact moment, Min-ho saw the delay. He saw Ji-hoon standing in the doorway, soaked in coffee, not moving. He realized the timing was blown. Min-ho panicked. He threw the car door open and rolled out onto the asphalt, sprinting toward the perimeter wall. He's running. Kang shouted, drawing his weapon. Ji-hoon watched, frozen, as the driver scrambled away. Then, he saw the car. Boom. The explosion was deafening. It wasn't just a fire, it was a concussion wave that slammed against the house. The armored sedan disintegrated. The heavy doors were blown off their hinges, spinning through the air like shrapnel. A fireball of orange and black oil rolled upward, consuming the driveway where Ji-hoon would have been standing 5 seconds ago. The shockwave hit the reinforced glass of the entryway. The windows flexed, then shattered, showering the foyer with diamond dust shards. Ji-hoon was thrown backward by the force of the blast. He landed hard on the marble floor, sliding 10 feet. Kang was knocked off his feet. Seo-yun, who had been further back, shielded her face with her arms, feeling the heat wash over her even from inside the house. Silence followed the roar, broken only by the crackle of flames and the high-pitched ringing in everyone's ears. The car alarm of a vehicle parked down the street was blaring. Slowly, painfully, Ji-hoon pushed himself up. His suit was ruined, first by coffee, now by dust and glass. He checked his limbs. Intact. He looked at the burning wreckage of his car. If he had walked out when he intended, if he hadn't stopped to strangle the maid, he would be pink mist right now. He turned his head. Through the smoke and the ringing, his eyes found Seo-yun. She was huddled against the wall, brushing glass out of her hair, looking terrified but unhurt. Ji-hoon stood up, ignoring Chief Kang who was shouting into his radio. He walked over to Seo-yun. He loomed over her, his shadow long in the flickering light of the burning car. Seo-yun looked up, expecting death. She had saved him, but she had also humiliated him and witnessed a weakness. In this world, that was often enough to get you killed. You saw the suspension, Ji-hoon said. His voice was steady, eerily calm amidst the chaos. Yes, sir, Seo-yun whispered. And the driver? Yes, sir. So you threw coffee on me. It was the only way to stop you, sir. You walk very fast. Ji-hoon stared at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a dark sound, devoid of humor. You burned my chest, ruined a $5,000 suit, and made me miss the most important meeting of my life. He reached down. Seo-yun flinched. But he didn't hit her. He grabbed her hand and pulled her to her feet. His grip was iron. You also just became the only person in this house I know isn't trying to kill me, Ji-hoon said. He turned to Kang. Lock the gates. No one leaves. Find the driver. And bring me a first aid kit. Not for me. For her. He looked at Seo-yun's hand. In the fall, she had cut her palm on the broken vase. Sir, we need to get you to the safe room, Kang urged, his gun scanning the perimeter. This could be a multi-stage attack. We're not going to the safe room, Ji-hoon said, his eyes cold and hard again. We're going to the garage. I'm taking the sports car. And she's coming with me. Me? Seo-yun squeaked. Sir, I'm just the maid. I need to clean up this coffee. You're not the maid anymore, Ji-hoon said, dragging her toward the interior door leading to the underground garage. Maid's clean. You spot car bombs. That makes you security. And right now, my security team is compromised. Who hired that driver, Kang? I did, sir. He came vetted by the agency, Kang stammered, looking pale. Then you're compromised too, Ji-hoon said, not looking back. Stay here and defend the house. If Minho gets away, don't bother being here when I get back. He pulled Seo-yun into the hallway, moving with that same terrifying speed, but this time, she was towed in his wake. Where are we going? Seo-yun asked, trying to keep up, her apron flapping. The summit, Ji-hoon said. I'm late. And I look like hell. But if I don't show up, whoever planted that bomb wins. You're going to drive. I don't have a license. Seo-yun lied. Ji-hoon stopped at the heavy steel door of the garage. He punched in a code. The door hissed open, revealing rows of exotic cars. He turned to her, leaning in close. The smell of burnt coffee was strong on him. You noticed a suspension imbalance of less than an inch from 30 feet away through a window, Ji-hoon said softly. Don't lie to me, Kim Seo-yun. You know cars. Pick one that's fast, and get us to Incheon. Now. Seo-yun looked at him. The facade was cracking. She could play the clumsy maid, or she could play the driver and survive. She looked at the row of cars, a Ferrari, a Bentley, and a vintage, modified Porsche 911 Turbo. She walked past the Ferrari. She walked past the Bentley. She went straight to the Porsche. Air-cooled, she muttered, opening the driver's door. Less electronics to hack. Manual transmission. She looked at Ji-hoon. Get in. And put on your seatbelt. I drive faster than Min-ho. Ji-hoon smirked, a dangerous glint in his eye. He slid into the passenger seat. Seo-yun turned the key. The flat-six engine roared to life, a guttural snarl that echoed in the concrete bunker. She slammed it into gear and peeled out of the garage, drifting the tail end around the corner with surgical precision. As they burst out of the side exit, bypassing the burning wreck at the front, Seo-yun glanced in the rearview mirror. We have a tail, she said calmly. Black SUV. No plates. Ji-hoon pulled a massive silver handgun from the glove box. He checked the chamber. Drive, he ordered. I'll handle the complaints department. The vintage Porsche 911 Turbo screamed onto the Hanam Bridge, the flat-six engine howling like a banshee behind them. Kim Seo-yun's hands were light on the steering wheel, her feet dancing on the pedals in a blur of heel-and-toe downshifts that would have made a rally driver weep with envy. In the passenger seat, Park Ji-hoon was twisted around, the heavy silver handgun booming in the confined space. The rear window shattered into 1,000 diamonds as a burst of automatic fire from the pursuing SUV raked the car. Keep it steady. Ji-hoon roared, ducking as glass rained down on his expensive, coffee-stained suit. I can't keep it steady if I want to keep us alive. Seo-yun yelled back, yanking the wheel hard to the left. The Porsche's rear end stepped out, sliding aggressively across 3 lanes of traffic. It was a terrifying maneuver in a car notorious for killing inexperienced drivers, but Seo-yun controlled the slide with a minute correction of the steering, slotting the car perfectly into the gap between a terrified taxi driver and a cement truck. The black SUV, heavier and lacking the agility of the German sports car, swerved clumsily to avoid the truck, clipping its bumper and sending sparks flying. They're armored, Ji-hoon reported, firing 2 more shots that sparked harmlessly off the SUV's windshield. And they have submachine guns. We can't outgun them. Then we have to outdrive them, Seo-yun said, her eyes fixed on the GPS screen. The summit is at the Incheon container terminal, right? That's 40 minutes by highway. We won't last 10 minutes with them on our tail. Suggestions? Ji-hoon asked, bracing himself as she slalomed through rush-hour traffic at 100 miles an hour. We go underground, Seo-yun said. The old maintenance tunnels near the river. I used to run parts through there when the cops were watching the bridges. You used to run parts? Ji-hoon looked at her, pain and adrenaline warring in his eyes. Who exactly did I hire to clean my house? A maid? A mechanic? A smuggler? Does it matter right now? Seo-yun snapped, downshifting violently as they approached a construction off-ramp that looked closed. She didn't slow down. She smashed through the orange plastic barriers, the Porsche launching briefly into the air before slamming down onto the gravel service road below. The SUV followed, bouncing heavily, its suspension groaning. They raced along the riverbank, kicking up plumes of dust. Ahead, a dark, gaping maw of a tunnel entrance appeared. A storm drain access that looked barely wide enough for a compact car, let alone a wide-body Porsche. You're not serious, Ji-hoon said, gripping the dashboard. Pull your arms in, Seo-yun ordered. She lined up the nose of the car and floored it. The Porsche shot into the darkness. The side mirrors scraped sparks against the concrete walls with a screech that set their teeth on edge. It was a claustrophobic nightmare of speed and darkness, illuminated only by the Porsche's headlights cutting through the gloom. Behind them, the SUV tried to follow. But Seo-yun had judged the width perfectly. The SUV was 6 inches too wide. There was a sickening metal crunch echoing from behind as the pursuit vehicle wedged itself into the tunnel entrance, jamming fast like a cork in a bottle. Seo-yun didn't lift her foot off the gas until they burst out the other side, miles downriver, emerging into the gray light of the industrial district. She slowed the car to a cruise, her breathing ragged, her hands trembling slightly now that the immediate threat was gone. The silence in the car was heavy. The smell of burnt coffee, gun smoke, and hot engine oil was suffocating. Ji-hoon holstered his weapon. He looked at the girl beside him. The maid who had been dusting his library yesterday, who had just driven like a professional getaway pilot. He looked at her profile, the way she bit her lip, the fierce concentration that hadn't faded. Pull over, Ji-hoon said quietly. We're going to be late, Seo-yun argued, glancing at the clock. Pull over, Seo-yun. That's an order. She sighed and steered the car into a secluded alleyway behind a derelict warehouse. She killed the engine. The silence was ringing. Ji-hoon turned to her. He reached out, and for a second, she flinched, thinking he was going to strike her for the coffee again. Instead, his hand brushed her shoulder. You're bleeding, he said. Seo-yun looked down. Shards of glass from the rear window had nicked her neck and cheek. Tiny rivulets of blood were staining her white collar. She hadn't even felt it. I'm fine, she said, wiping her cheek with the back of her glove. What about you? The coffee. Ji-hoon unbuttoned his jacket and shirt. The skin of his chest was an angry, blistering red. It looked agonizing. Yet, he hadn't made a sound of complaint during the entire chase. I've had worse, he muttered, buttoning it back up. But I can't walk into a meeting with the triad heads looking like I lost a fight with a barista. It shows weakness. In my world, weakness is a death sentence. Open the glove box, Seo-yun said. There's a first aid kit. And, maybe something else. Ji-hoon opened it. Beneath the spare magazines and the registration papers, there was a small, black silk scarf. He looked at it, confused. It was in the car when I cleaned it last week, Seo-yun admitted. I think it belongs to one of your lady friends. Ji-hoon looked at the scarf, then at Seo-yun. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. It's a cravat. It belongs to me. I wear it for the opera. Use it, Seo-yun said. Wrap it around your neck, tuck it into the shirt. It will hide the burns and the stained collar. It will look rakish. Like you didn't have time to dress fully because you were too busy being important. Ji-hoon did as she suggested. He tied the black silk around his neck, covering the red skin and the coffee stains. He looked in the rearview mirror. With the disheveled hair, the unbuttoned top collar, and the silk scarf, he didn't look like a victim. He looked dangerous. Wild. Like a predator that had just rolled out of bed to kill something. Better, he asked. You look like a pirate, Seo-yun said honestly. But a scary one. Good. Ji-hoon turned to her. Now, tell me the truth. Where did you learn to drive? And don't tell me it was video games. Seo-yun gripped the steering wheel, staring out at the brick wall. My father ran a garage in Busan. Illegal street racing. He put me in a go-kart when I was 4. By the time I was 16, I was driving the lead car for runs to the port. I know how to handle oversteer. I know how to spot a trap. And I know that when a car sits low on the left, it's carrying a payload. And why is a street racer working as a maid? Because my father made a mistake, Seo-yun whispered. He took a loan from the wrong people. Your people. The Busan branch of the Chilsong Syndicate. He couldn't pay. They took the garage. They took everything. I came to Seoul to disappear. To work off the debt in secret. I thought if I worked for the chairman, I'd be safe from the debt collectors. Ji-hoon stared at her. The irony was palpable. The organization that had ruined her life was the same one she had just saved. You saved the man who owns the debt that destroyed your family, Ji-hoon said slowly. I saved a man from a car bomb, Seo-yun corrected, turning to face him, her eyes defiant. I didn't do it for the syndicate. I did it because I don't let people die if I can stop it. Even you. Ji-hoon looked at her for a long, intense moment. The air in the car felt charged, electric. He saw the fire in her, the competence, the morality that survived in a world stripped of it. Drive, Ji-hoon said softly. Get us to the terminal. When this day is over, Kim Seo-yun, your debt is cancelled. I swear it. Seo-yun nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She started the engine. Hold on. We have 10 minutes to cross the city. They arrived at the Incheon container terminal with 2 minutes to spare. The vast industrial landscape was a maze of stacked shipping containers, towering cranes, and cold sea wind. At the end of Pier 4, a black tent had been set up, surrounded by luxury cars and armed guards. This was neutral ground. The Triad delegation was waiting. Seo-yun drifted the battered Porsche to a halt right in front of the guards. The car was a wreck, glass missing, bullet holes in the bumper, scratched paint. It looked like it had been through a war zone. The guards raised their weapons, startled. Ji-hoon stepped out. He adjusted his jacket, the black silk scarf fluttering in the wind. He looked at the car, then at the guards. Valet this, he ordered, tossing the keys to a stunned Triad enforcer. And be careful with the clutch. It's vintage. He walked around to the driver's side and opened the door for Seo-yun. She hesitated. I should stay with the car, she whispered. No, Ji-hoon said, offering his hand. Min-ho was the driver. He turned traitor. I don't trust anyone out here. You're the only one I trust to watch my back. You're coming in. Seo-yun took his hand. He pulled her out. She smoothed her maid's uniform, feeling ridiculously out of place among the suits and tactical gear. But Ji-hoon placed a hand on the small of her back, guiding her forward with a possessiveness that made the guards step aside. They entered the tent. Inside, it was like a different world. Persian rugs over the concrete, crystal decanters, and a round table where 3 elderly Chinese men sat, flanked by their own silent bodyguards. Master Zhang, the head of the Triad delegation, stood up. He was a small man with eyes like polished jade. He looked at Ji-hoon's disheveled appearance, the scarf, the maid standing beside him. Chairman Park, Zhang said, his voice smooth and oily. You are late. And, unprepared? You bring your domestic staff to a negotiation? I bring loyalty, Ji-hoon said, taking his seat and pulling a chair out for Seo-yun to his right. Something that seems to be in short supply today. My car exploded this morning, Zhang. Someone didn't want this meeting to happen. Zhang's eyes narrowed. An unfortunate accident? A calculated attempt, Ji-hoon corrected. My driver was bought. My security compromised. The only reason I am breathing is because this woman, he gestured to Seo-yun, has better eyes than my entire payroll. Seo-yun sat rigid, trying to make herself small. She felt the eyes of every killer in the room on her. But she also felt Ji-hoon's leg pressing against hers under the table, a solid, grounding presence. We are here to discuss the territory split, Zhang said, dismissing the assassination attempt with a wave of his hand. The Incheon routes. We believe a 60-40 split in our favor is generous, given your recent security failures. Ji-hoon leaned back, crossing his arms. The burns on his chest screamed, but his face was a mask of bored arrogance. 50-50. Or I burn the ports down and nobody moves product. The negotiation dragged on. Tension was a physical weight in the room. Seo-yun watched the guards. She watched the serving staff bringing tea. She watched everything. Her eyes landed on a man standing in the back shadow of the tent. He was wearing a Triad suit, but his posture was different. He was shifting his weight from foot to foot. He kept checking his watch. Seo-yun nudged Ji-hoon's knee with hers. A sharp, double tap. Ji-hoon paused mid-sentence. He glanced at her. She tilted her head almost imperceptibly toward the back of the room. Ji-hoon didn't look immediately. He finished his point about customs tariffs, then casually reached for his water glass, using the movement to scan the room in the reflection of the silver pitcher. He saw the man. He saw the earpiece. And he saw the man's hand moving slowly behind his back, reaching for something tucked into his waistband that wasn't a standard-issue sidearm. It was a bulky, cylindrical device. A signal jammer? Or a detonator? Master Zhang, Ji-hoon said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly polite whisper. I think we need to pause the negotiation. Why? Zhang demanded, annoyed. Because, Ji-hoon stood up, his hand going to his jacket. I believe your security is as compromised as mine. The man in the back realized he was Maid. He screamed something in Cantonese and pulled the device. It wasn't a jammer. It was a flashbang grenade. Down! Ji-hoon roared, grabbing Seo-yun and pulling her under the heavy oak table. The grenade went off, bang, a blinding flash of white light and a concussive boom that shattered the eardrums. Chaos erupted. Gunfire sprayed the tent. But it wasn't the triads shooting at Ji-hoon. It was a third party, mercenaries bursting in through the back flaps of the tent, cutting down triad and syndicate guards alike. Under the table, amidst the screaming and the falling bodies, Ji-hoon looked at Seo-yun. His ears were ringing, his vision swimming from the flash. Who are they? Seo-yun yelled, grabbing his arm. The rival faction, Ji-hoon gritted out, drawing his gun. They didn't just want to kill me. They wanted to kill the alliance. They're wiping the board. He looked at the exit. Blocked by gunfire. He looked at Zhang, who was overturned in his chair, bleeding but alive, shouting orders. We need a vehicle. Ji-hoon yelled. The Porsche is dead. Seo-yun looked around the tent from their low vantage point. She saw the keys that the valet had placed on a side table. Not the Porsche keys. The keys to Master Zhang's armored Rolls-Royce. Cover me, Seo-yun said. What? I said cover me. Before Ji-hoon could stop her, the maid scrambled out from under the table. She didn't run away. She ran toward the gunfire, sliding across the floor like a baseball player stealing home, snatching the keys from the table as bullets chewed up the carpet inches from her fingers. She rolled behind a heavy ice chest, gasping for breath. She looked back at Ji-hoon and held up the keys with a shaky grin. Ji-hoon shook his head in disbelief. He popped up, firing 3 precise shots that dropped a mercenary advancing on her position. Get to the car, he roared. They sprinted out the side of the tent, into the cold sea air. The Rolls-Royce Phantom was parked 10 meters away, a beast of steel and luxury. Seo-yun dove into the driver's seat. Ji-hoon threw Master Zhang, who was bewildered and limping, into the back seat and dove into the passenger side. Drive! Zhang screamed. They are everywhere. Seo-yun fired up the V12 engine. She looked at Ji-hoon. Where to? The bridge is blocked, Ji-hoon said, reloading. The road is a kill box. Seo-yun looked at the shipping containers. She looked at the massive crane loading a cargo ship nearby. We're not taking the road, she said, revving the engine. Seo-yun, Ji-hoon warned, seeing the look in her eyes. Do not tell me we are jumping the car. We're not jumping, she said, spinning the heavy limousine around. We're shipping out. She gunned it straight toward the loading ramp of the cargo ship. The Rolls-Royce Phantom hit the metal loading ramp of the cargo ship Red Star at 60 miles an hour. The suspension bottomed out with a bone-jarring crunch, sending sparks cascading into the dark water of the harbor below. Inside the cabin, Master Zhang screamed in a pitch that defied his elderly dignity, clutching the leather armrest as if it were a life raft. Ji-hoon didn't scream, he was reloading. Seo-yun grit her teeth, her hands fighting the heavy steering wheel as the massive luxury sedan skidded onto the steel deck of the ship, drifting between stacks of shipping containers like a erratic bowling ball. Behind them, the lead mercenary vehicle, a modified jeep, hit the ramp too fast. It caught air, clipped the edge of the rising tide, and slammed into the stern railing of the ship, exploding in a fireball that scorched the paint of the Phantom's rear bumper. Seo-yun didn't look back. She navigated the labyrinth of the deck with terrifying familiarity, dodging forklifts and bewildered deckhands who dove for cover. The hold! Seo-yun yelled, pointing to the open maw of the vehicle transport ramp leading down into the belly of the ship. We have to get below the waterline. The armor won't hold against RPGs. Go! Ji-hoon commanded, leaning out the window to fire 3 suppressing shots at a second mercenary vehicle that had managed to land on the deck. Seo-yun plunged the car into the darkness of the ship's hold. The sudden change from daylight to artificial yellow sodium lights was blinding. The hold was a cavernous steel cathedral filled with export vehicles, rows of Hyundais and Kias destined for overseas. She drifted the Rolls around a corner, parking it sideways behind a wall of crates to break the line of sight. Engine off, she whispered. Everyone down. Silence descended, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the distant clang of boots on the metal deck above and the groan of the ship's hull. In the back seat, Master Zhang was hyperventilating, his jade prayer beads clicking furiously in his trembling hands. They will come down, Zhang hissed. We are trapped like rats in a bucket. We're not rats, Ji-hoon said, his voice calm, the black silk scarf at his neck now loose and stained with sweat. We're the exterminators. Seo-yun, do you know this ship? It's a Jean-class freighter, Seo-yun said, her eyes scanning the shadows. I smuggled a crate of stolen ECUs on a sister ship 3 years ago. The fire suppression system is halon gas. But the manual override is on the bridge. Too far, Ji-hoon said. What else? Seo-yun looked at the rows of cars strapped down with heavy chains. She looked at the steep angle of the ramp they had just driven down. A wicked idea formed in her mind. A mechanic's solution to a tactical problem. The turnbuckles, she said, pointing to the chains holding the cargo in place. These cars are secured for rough seas. If we release the tension on the front row, and if the ship lists. Gravity, Ji-hoon finished, understanding immediately. You want to start an avalanche. I need a tire iron, Seo-yun said, popping her door open. And I need you to draw their fire to the top of the ramp. You want me to be bait? Ji-hoon raised an eyebrow. You're the chairman, she smirked, grabbing the tool kit from under the seat. You're used to being the center of attention. Ji-hoon let out a low chuckle. Fair enough. Zhang, stay in the car. Keep your head down. Ji-hoon moved to the base of the ramp, using a concrete pillar for cover. He fired a shot into the ceiling lights, shattering them and drawing the attention of the mercenary team descending the ramp. Over here, he taunted. Come and get your bonus. The mercenaries took the bait. They bunched up, moving down the ramp in a tactical stack, their weapons raised. Meanwhile, Seo-yun was moving like a ghost among the parked export cars on the upper tier of the hold. She worked feverishly with the tire iron, snapping the quick-release tensioners on the chains holding 3 heavy SUVs at the top of the incline. Her muscles burned, her breath coming in short gasps, but she didn't slow down. She released the last chain. The SUVs groaned, their tires straining against the chocks. Now, she screamed. She kicked the wheel chocks away. Gravity took over. 3 tons of steel rolled forward, gathering speed instantly on the steep metal incline. The lead SUV smashed into the one in front of it, creating a domino effect. A wall of cars cascaded down the ramp, tumbling and crashing with the noise of a collapsing building. The mercenaries looked up, but it was too late. They turned to run, but there was nowhere to go in the narrow tunnel. The avalanche of vehicles slammed into them, burying them under a twisted mountain of metal and glass. The impact shook the entire ship. Dust and silence settled over the hold. Ji-hoon stepped out from behind the pillar, dusting off his ruined suit. He walked over to the wreckage. There was no movement. He looked up at the upper tier, where Seo-yun was standing, wiping grease from her forehead with her white glove, now black with oil. Remind me, Ji-hoon called up to her, to give you a raise. I accept cash or classic cars, Seo-yun called back, her adrenaline fading into exhaustion. They reconvened at the Rolls-Royce. Master Zhang peered out, saw the destruction, and looked at Seo-yun with newfound respect and fear. Your maid, he said to Ji-hoon, is a terrifying woman. She is, Ji-hoon agreed, opening the door for Seo-yun. And she's mine. He turned to Seo-yun. The threat is neutralized here. But the source is still back at the estate. We need to go home. In this? Seo-yun pointed to the battered rolls. No, Ji-hoon said, pulling out his phone. I'm calling in the reserves. The loyal ones. It's time to clean house. 2 hours later, a convoy of black SUVs tore through the gates of the Park estate. The sun had set, and the burning wreckage of the car bomb had been extinguished, leaving a black scar on the driveway. Chief Kong was standing in the foyer, barking orders to a group of confused guards. He looked up, startled, as the front doors were kicked open. Ji-hoon walked in. He was still wearing the ruined suit, the black silk scarf, and the dirt of the ship's hold. He looked like a revenant returned from the grave. Behind him walked Seo-yun, no longer in her maid's uniform, but wearing a tactical jacket one of the guards had given her. Chairman. Kong stammered, his face draining of color. You're alive. We thought, the radio went silent. You thought I was dead, Ji-hoon said, walking slowly toward him. You hoped I was dead. Sir, I don't know what you mean, Kong backed away, his hand drifting toward his gun. Don't, Ji-hoon said softly. Seo-yun sees everything, remember? She saw the driver. She saw the suspension. And she saw the transaction logs on your tablet while you were securing the house. Kang's eyes flicked to Seo-yun. She's just a servant. She knows nothing. I know you transferred 3 million won to an offshore account in Macau 10 minutes before the explosion, Seo-yun said, stepping forward. And I know you disabled the perimeter sensors in Sector 4 to let the driver escape. You didn't vet Min-ho. You hired him to kill your boss. Kong snarled and went for his weapon. Bang! Ji-hoon didn't hesitate. He shot Kong in the shoulder, spinning him around. The chief of security fell to the floor, groaning. Ji-hoon stood over him. You sold me out to the rival faction. For what? Money? Power? For survival. Kong spat, clutching his bleeding shoulder. They said you were weak. They said you were going soft, making peace with the triads. The syndicate needs a war leader, not a diplomat. I am a war leader, Ji-hoon said coldly. But I pick my wars. And I pick my soldiers. He turned to the other guards, who were watching in stunned silence. Take him away. The basement. I'll deal with him personally later. As Kong was dragged away, screaming curses, the adrenaline finally left the room. Ji-hoon sagged slightly, the exhaustion of the day hitting him. He looked around his foyer, shattered windows, mud on the carpet, the smell of cordite. He turned to Seo-yun. She was standing by the broken vase she had knocked over that morning, a lifetime ago. She looked small suddenly, just a girl in a jacket too big for her, surrounded by violence she had tried to escape. You're fired, Ji-hoon said. Seo-yun looked up, blinking. What? You're fired, Ji-hoon repeated. As a maid. You're terrible at it. You spill coffee, you break vases, and you talk back. Seo-yun felt a hollow ache in her chest. I understand. I'll pack my things. Where are you going? Ji-hoon asked, stepping into her path. To find a new job. Maybe a garage in Incheon. No, Ji-hoon said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a set of keys. Not car keys. A heavy, iron key to the main house. I need a new chief of security. Someone who can spot a bomb from 50 feet. Someone who can drive a Porsche through a storm drain. Someone who isn't afraid to ruin my suits to save my life. Seo-yun looked at the key. You want me to run your security? I'm a mechanic, Ji-hoon. Not a soldier. You're better than a soldier, Ji-hoon said, his voice dropping to a murmur. You're a survivor. And you're the only person I trust to watch my back. He took her hand, pressing the key into her palm. His fingers lingered on hers, warm and rough. Besides, you owe me a new suit. Seo-yun looked at the key, then up at his dark, intense eyes. She saw the challenge there, and the promise. The suit will come out of my paycheck, she said, closing her fingers around the key. But I'm keeping the Porsche. Ji-hoon smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. Deal. Seo-yun went from serving coffee to running an empire's security, proving that sometimes a mistake is just an opportunity in disguise. Do you think she made the right choice staying with Ji-hoon, or should she have taken the Porsche and run? And who else wants to see them race again? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.